Let's move on to our review of the week. Today's review is Pax Pamir, 2nd edition. The designer is Cole Worley. The artist is also Cole Worley, but that doesn't mean he drew the art. It means, I believe, all of the art is actually taken from historical art of the era.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Or from illustrations done of the people in that era. I know it was all actual
really
art
interesting
that was
tidbit.
pulled from libraries and sources and research. Publisher is Whirly Gig Games. That is Cole and his brother's publishing company, and this is their very first game. The first edition of it was done by Sierra Madre Games, which makes all the other PAX games, which is Phil Eklund and Matt Eklund's company. And they make games like PAX Renaissance and PAX Porfiriana and lots of games that start with the word PAX. And Pax Pamir was a game that came out through them. And then Cole has now released a 2nd edition through his own Whirly Gig Games. And they kickstarted it, and it is gorgeous.
And it's really fun.
It is one of the more beautiful games I own. If you want to see what it looks like, you can go to our YouTube channel, Game Brain Podcast YouTube, and I did an unboxing video of it.
Cool.
Did I do a good job of it? I don't know. I feel like I made some mistakes.
You did really,
I
really
judge
good.
myself harshly. What is Pax Pamir about? I'm going to go ahead and read you some information. First of all, it is a 1 to 5 player game. Plays in anywhere between, I'd say, 45 minutes and 2 hours. Mm-hmm. It could be a fast game. This is one of those games that could be over pretty quick. And I don't really think it's going to go longer than 2 hours. If it's a 5-player game and it's your first teach, you're maybe looking at 2.5, 3.
We played with 3, right?
We played with 3. Yes,
Yeah,
I have now played
quick.
at every player count. I played at 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Yeah.
It plays great at all. Let me tell you a little bit about the game. This is taken directly from BGG. In Pax Pamir, players assume the role of 19th century Afghan leaders attempting to forge a new state after the collapse of the Durrani Empire. Western histories often call this period the Great Game because of the role played by the Europeans who attempted to use Central Asia as a theater for their own rivalries. In this game, those empires, are reviewed strictly from the perspective of the Afghans who sought to manipulate the interloping Ferengi, foreigners, for their own purposes. In terms of gameplay, Pax Pamir is pretty straightforward tableau builder. Players spend most of their turns purchasing cards from a central market, then playing those cards in front of them in a single row called a court. Playing cards adds units to the game's map and grants access to additional actions that can be taken to disrupt other players and influence the course of the game. The last point is worth emphasizing. Though everyone is building their own row of cards, the game offers many ways for players to interfere with each other directly and indirectly. To survive, players will organize into coalitions. Throughout the game, the dominance of the different coalitions will be evaluated by the players when a special card called a dominance check is resolved. If a single coalition has a commanding lead during one of these checks, those players loyal to that coalition will receive victory points based on their influence of their coalition. However, if Afghanistan remains fragmented during one of those checks, players instead will receive victory points based on their personal power base. That is, in a nutshell, Pax Pamir. It is not a complicated game, although it is it's a teach. It's a 30-minute teach. In terms of PAX games, the simplest by a country mile. Mm-hmm. I've taught PAX Renaissance many times. It's my least favorite game to teach. I've taught Pax Pamir many times. I'd teach it to pretty much anyone.
It felt really quick.
Thank you.
Yeah, it really did.
You even said afterwards that you thought I did a good job.
Absolutely.
And I appreciated that. What makes a PAX game? I'll tell you. A PAX game, and we actually spoke about this a lot in our group, trying to figure out what makes a PAX game, because they're all pretty different. But what makes a PAX game to me is card-based. They all have a market of cards you're buying. That's definitely a big part of it. Strange victory conditions, different victory conditions, multiple ways to win, although Pax Pamir kind of breaks that rule, and we'll get into that. And the last one is you are always playing as an individual. The perspective of you as the player, you are taking the role of an individual. You are not taking a company or a corporation. In Pax Renaissance, you are playing a banker. In Pax Porfiriana, you're playing a general, I think. I've only played it once. But you're playing a person. And you are trying to use your influence and find other people to help you and build a court of people, etc., and generate a tableau of actions that can help you to personally win. And to me, that's sort of a hallmark of it is you are never playing England. You're never playing France.
Yeah.
You are one person and trying to do huge things. And sort of that's what's the cool theme of Pax Renaissance is like, that's what changed in the Renaissance. Before it was kings and empires. And then when the Renaissance came along, it was merchants. Those are the people who ran the world.
Financial power. Sure.
Right. And that has sort of been the way the world is since.
Absolutely.
Singular people, individuals with power and money and power via money are the ones who can they're more powerful than governments and empires. Right. And so that's sort of so in Pax Pamir, you are an Afghani tribesman or tribeswoman. You're just the leader of an Afghani tribe.
Yep.
And you can throw your hat in with different factions. You can say, I'm backing the British, I'm backing the Russians, or I'm backing Afghanistan.
And you can swap sides. Constantly,
sides.
actually.
You can change sides. The goal of the game is not to be on the winning side. It's to have back to the winning side at the right moments.
Exactly.
Throughout time, in order to get the most points. So, Jake, you are a casual gamer.
Yep.
This is not a casual game.
I didn't know it wasn't a casual game. It felt pretty casual. I mean, it didn't feel overly complicated. I felt like I understood it. I never felt lost, as I do in many of the games I try. I enjoyed it very much. I wouldn't have said, if somebody asked me how casual or difficult it was, I wouldn't have said it was a heavy game.
Tell me things you disliked about the game.
I loved how simple the choices are. You didn't have to keep in your mind 200 things and a million variables.
Do you remember sort of the basic things you can do on a turn?
Yeah, I mean you're basically putting a guy down,
a card,
right? A card, right? Excuse me, and reacting to what cards you have in your hand. I mean you have. It's pretty simple choices. I mean, you're never holding even more than how many cards are in your hand at a time? It's like 3 or 4.
Well, at the beginning of the game, I think your hand size is limited to 2, which is how many hands you have. Easy to remember.
No,
but you're buying cards from a market.
Yes, and you're trying to expand how many cards you can hold
in your
that you can have more turns, more options per turn. I loved how much you could easily see what the other person was doing because that's one of the hurdles for me in the heavier games is trying to keep track of what other people are doing, which so many of our game group have said to me. It's like that's kind of a plateau you reach where you stop thinking about what you're doing and you take into consideration what the other guys are doing, which seems obvious maybe to people who are so deep into the hobby. But for me, that's a big jump. Like to keep control what my options are and then also take into account the other ones. Yeah. That can be difficult. But in this one, I really felt like I could see what you were up to on your move, and it made sense and why you were doing it. And our other friend who we were playing with, his moves made sense to me. Right. Like it wasn't overbearing.
And I taught it. So we had our friend Zach Perlman who joined us as well, who's not a member of our podcast, but a friend of our show, and who will come on the podcast at some point. You'll meet
and
him
clearly
as well.
a game lover. I mean,
He's
game brain for sure.
But it was you, me, and Zach, and two I would call casual board gamers.
Oh yeah,
Zach's definitely not a casual video gamer, but a casual board gamer. And I wanted to see how it would fare. I wanted to see how I could if two people who do not normally play Euros or heavy games at all, how they would fare in a PAX game.
It definitely felt like we both picked it up pretty quick.
Oh, totally.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, I won. Yeah. But it was really close in the end. And I think that's sort of the fun thing about this game in particular is that you're never out.
Yeah. And also you actually prefaced it when you were teaching us. So you're like, guys, if I wanted to destroy you, like I could. Having played it 10 times, I could just bury you. But you didn't. You used restraint and you made it fun, and it was a really good learning game.
I'm not trying to be cocky. I just think PAX games are one of those games that the person with the most experience is going to win most of the time.
Absolutely. I could see immediately that if I played it more, I would get better at it.
Yeah. Which I think is a great hallmark of the game is that it's worth playing multiple times and that you will improve and the strategies are interesting. So let's talk briefly about strategy in this game. So we talk about it with Ricky Royal in our interview that you'll hear in a few minutes. And we get into the solo strategy of the game, but the multiplayer strategy, Ricky calls it, he said the game is more tactical than strategic. And I think I agree with that. I think it is tactical, but I think there's a fair amount of strategy as well. I think, and it's something that I want to experiment more with the game. But so the game works through these dominance cards, and the dominance cards are going to be the thing that are the time limit of the game.
Yeah, they definitely are.
There's 4 in the deck. When the 4th one comes out and somebody buys it, the game ends. Yeah. Right. But not all of them necessarily will happen. It has a really interesting mechanic. So when a dominance card comes into the market, and so as you buy cards shuffle down, new cards come in. You have this deck of cards. When a dominance card comes out, nothing happens then. If somebody buys it, you score basically. I'll explain how the scoring works. You score. But if a dominance card is in the market and another one comes out, they automatically cancel each other out and one happens.
Yep.
thus taking one dominance check out of the game. So if you allow that one to sit there enough time for one to come out, you've shortened the game by 25%.
Yeah, and it drastically alters scoring also.
Drastically.
Yeah.
And so you could only have 2 dominance checks in the whole game. So the first one comes out, sits in the market, so the other one comes out. Those 2 are gone. Third one comes out, nobody buys it. Fourth one hits. Now you've had an entire game with only 2 scorings. So there's somewhere between 2 and 4 scorings in the game. And the main thing you're looking for in the game is, does a faction have dominance?
Yep.
So there are 3 factions in the game: Russia, Britain, and Afghanistan. And they have pieces on the board. They're yellow, green, and pink. And it's very easy to look and see who has dominance, because if somebody has 4 more pieces on the board than anybody else, they have dominance. You don't have to count them. It comes in a lovely little holder, and you just
really convenient.
You just look at the holder, and does anybody have 4 more pieces on the board than anybody else? Because they're all lined up next to each other. You can count really quickly. If no, nobody has dominance.
They look like giant D6s, honestly.
Like long ones, yeah,
Like
exactly.
long, yeah, distended ones. Sort of.
They're beautiful acrylic pieces. Again, you could see it in my unboxing video. So that's a dominance check. And then if somebody has dominance, then whoever has the most loyalty in that faction scores 5 points. Second place gets 3rd. First place gets 1. By the way, an interesting thing in this game, you win the game at any point if you have 4 more points than anybody else.
Which is another part of the ticking clock. Because a player who can get there quickly, boom, it's over.
But also remember that I just said you get 5 points for having the most loyalty. If nobody else has loyalty in that faction, you just won the game. So you can't let somebody have dominance alone in a faction, or else they instantly
It really
win
does force your hand.
on a dominance check.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the fun part of this game, is that at the beginning of the game, you decide who you want to throw your hat in with to start. Okay. And it's not a random choice. You look at the market, you see, there are certain cards that give you influence, loyalty with different factions. You might think, oh, there's a lot of loyalty available for Britain. Maybe I should throw my hat in them, etc. But at any point, you can change by buying a card that has a patriot of another loyalty, or by, it gets a little in the weeds, but you could kill a card and take it as a prize and change. There's a few ways to change. But if all of a sudden Jake switches to Afghanistan and he's the only one in Afghanistan and he's able to drop 4 pieces on the board really quick and nobody else has pieces and a dominance card comes out, Jake could win the game.
Yeah.
And that's why the game could be over in 30 to 45 minutes.
That almost happened once in our game.
So there is a little bit of also cooperation that can happen between other players. Okay, guys, Jake's about to win. Everybody needs to stop what they're doing and make sure the game doesn't end this round. And put pieces on the board so that he doesn't have dominance anymore.
We had quite a few allegiance swaps.
Oh,
we started out, it was you and me against him, and then all of a sudden you dumped me.
Yeah.
And
part of what I wanted to show you, I wanted to show you how many times you can change factions and use it to your benefit. So I think I changed at least once for every dominance check. At least 4 times I changed through it, because we actually went through all 4. We didn't have any cancel out.
Yeah.
And I was changing back and forth constantly, mostly to sort of set the pace, because now I've changed to this. Now I'm the same thing as Zach. Jake, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So you need to do something different than you're doing, because if nobody has dominance, all that matters is how many of your cylinders you have out in the game.
Your pieces.
Your pieces,
so that's
right.
clear, yeah.
So then it becomes a race to just get pieces on the board. And Jake was beating me in the pieces on the board game.
Yeah, and then you flipped it on me.
Right.
And it didn't matter how many pieces I had.
Yeah, because if nobody has dominance, you just score 3 points to whoever has the most pieces on the board and 1 for the second. And Jake had more pieces than me. I couldn't catch up with him. So I needed to make sure that somebody had dominance.
Yeah.
So I joined Zach's, got dominance, and then very quickly got enough influence to tie him, which then when you tie, you add 3 and 5, you get 8, you each get 4 points. So, but those kind of power moves and those plays and those like tactical things are really fun. But I think there's an overall strategy. And the main reason that there is strategy in this game is that there is a cool rule wherein the final dominance check scores double.
Yeah.
Whatever the final win is, whether it's the 4th or the 2nd. Because remember, whatever the final win is, if the first 2 cancel each other out and then the next 2 cancel each other out, then that's the last one.
Sure, so you can be lagging and still totally take it away.
And to me, that's what's very exciting about this game, is that you can have zero. I've played a game, and I believe it was with Alfred, and I believe I've played 2 now, where somebody had 0 points going into the final dominance and won.
Nice.
Now, that may initially sound like, well, anybody could win. But I think maybe in the first game we played where it happened with Alfred, it was just, we're all just seeing what happens in the game and not necessarily understanding. But I think you can have you need to plan against that, because players can go, I'm not going to fight for every point for the first few dominance points like you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build a tableau that can handle anything, that can sustain any blows, that whatever happens, I'll be more prepared than everyone else. I'm going to hoard my money. I'm going to be ready. I'm going to make sure that I have the most dominance, and that, you know, when that last card comes out, I have a bunch of cards in my hand. I can go boom, 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 play them really quickly, throw out a whole bunch of stuff on the board, and get potentially 10 points because it's double.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if you already mentioned this, but from your tableau, on your turn, you can play all the cards you can play. So it's kind of like an engine in that sense.
Well, you have 2 actions, but there are free actions every round, depending on what suit is favored, right? Every card there's 4 suits in the game, sort of like a deck of cards.
I just remember the feeling of like trying to create something that stacks.
Oh, 100%. You make little combos, little moves and attacks, and you know.
Zach did that very well.
And all the actions in the game are pretty intuitive. They can be explained. Oh, if you want money, you do this action. If you want to kill, you want to murder,
put a guy on the board, you do this.
Exactly. I think it's brilliant.
It was fun.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I think
it really was. I would love to play it again.
I think that's a testament to the game and that's why I wanted to try it with a casual gamer, because I think this was the first PAX game I had played, or actually one of the first like very heavy games. I'd call it a heavy game that I think casuals can enjoy because A, it's tactical, because it's really just about maximizing each turn and doing your best and you can, but also the more you play it, the better you get, the more strategic it gets. And it's not a super hard teach, and the story is there.
Absolutely.
This feeling of, now I've joined this faction, now me and Zach are a team. Now, we played at 3-player, which one cool thing about this game is it plays so different every player count, because 3 players, there's always going to be 2 people against 1. Right? In 4 players, though, super different vibe. Now it could be 2 versus 2. It could be everybody has a different one, and one person deciding who they join with. The 5-player game also is very interesting, because you can have 2 to 3 different. Everybody could be, you know, fighting for their factions. And the 2-player game is also fascinating. And we're going to talk about the solo game with Ricky. But it's rare I find a game that feels like a different game at different player counts. And I don't know which I'd recommend the most. I think
3 felt really
great.
Nice and comfortable pace, because that's something also in the more heavy games with a lot of players. For me, I get it's not bored, but there's a certain amount of frustration waiting.
No, I totally get it. I absolutely get it. I mean, if there's, even for me who loves games so much, if there's 20 minutes between my turns,
it's hard to focus.
It's hard not to pull that phone out sometimes, and I hate doing it, but my mind wanders. That might be the problem with the 5-player game. It could be, especially if you've got AP prone players. It could be a minute. It could be a minute. It's still a fast game. You have 2 actions. But I think 3 and 4 might be the sweet spot. I would have no problem playing it with 5 though, and no problem playing it at any player count. And I think the solo game is fantastic.
I really like the mechanic where you get your cards, about laying out the payment to get to the card down the line. That spoke to me, and I can't really remember seeing that before. You said it was common.
That's a hallmark of the PAX game. So if you want to buy a card, so you can. The cards are in a market that's labeled 0 to 5.
Horizontally out in front of you.
Right. So if you want to buy a 0 card, it's free. If you want to buy a 1 card, it costs you $1, but you have to put the coin on the card to the left of it.
Right.
If you want to buy the 3rd card, you got to put 1, 2, 3 coins all the way up.
Which was also fascinating, because as you explained in the teach, it's a closed economy. So you only have so many dollar chits, and so do the others, and you spend them quickly, and then they're sort of out in the world. And in order to collect them back is getting the cards, because as you take the card, you get the coins that were already on it.
Totally.
So there's this whole little mathematical thing that really felt natural to me, that sometimes you're just taking cards for the money.
Oh, absolutely.
And
a lot of times.
I mean, that was a really interesting. I'd almost like to play another game just to use that mechanic again.
Absolutely.
That employs that.
Totally. Look, it's early to say game of year, but I'll just tell you right now, my 2 favorite games of the year so far are Pax Pamir and Pipelines. Those to me.
Pipelines was great.
Pipelines is amazing.
I remember that one. That was great.
Those are the 2 games that you got to beat them if you want to get on my my top 3 of the year or whatnot. To me, these are the most exciting games of the year for me. I think Cole Worley knocked it out of the park with this. I love Root. I would prefer to play this. This is my favorite Cole Worley game. I have not played an Infamous Traffic, which is a game of his.
I think that was sort of brought to the table while I was on my back.
Yeah, maybe. I think you'd like that one.
I think I would.
But I think Pax Pamir 2nd edition is fantastic. I I think you'll be able to purchase it through their website soon. The Kickstarter ended. Everybody got their copies in the last few months. There's a little bit of a dip in between retail and Kickstarter, but keep an eye on the BGG page for updates. I know it will be readily available at some point.
You know
not
what
too
else
long
I'll
in the
say
future.
about this one as a throwback to Paul's episode is this game created memories for me.
Yeah.
Like there was a moment when me and Zach were going back and forth. I put a piece, he takes it off. I put a piece, and there was this back and forth of tempo that just like that. I just remember that moment. That was like a cool sort of battle for power that it'll keep in my memory.
I'm really glad you said that because I agree. I think that this game and PAX games in general, and also Cole Worley's games, would definitely fall under the line of great Euro games that have huge thematic storytelling possibilities that can create lasting memories in a game group.
Yeah, and there's something inherently like it's I won't say it tugs at your heartstrings, but this is about like the real world. This happened.
Yeah.
Like this conflict kind of
We
still
go into
is real.
We go into what if territory.
Yeah, I was sure. Well, sure, but it's not just like laser guns and monsters and stuff. And so I connected to it on that level for sure.
And I love an unusual theme, and I have not played a historical game in this era. I bought a book based on the era, which is called. Oh, I will put the name of it in the notes. But I've been reading a book on it and wanting to learn more about the historical period because it was something I didn't know anything about.
Also, I think it's pretty bold that they would put you in the position where the protagonist is, I mean, America's pretty xenophobic, and like the idea that you're playing a tribal leader in a place where most people couldn't find it on a map, to be fair, that's something that was pretty impressive for me. I was kind of blown away by that.
And the designer really wants you to understand this era of history as well. So in the rule book, there is a whole page on books he recommends you read if you want to know more about it. Return of a King is the name of the book that I've been reading, and it's fantastic. And there's a reason they call it this era is called the Great Game, which is funny because it's surprising it took this long for someone to make a game of the Great Game.
Yeah.
But it is a really interesting period in history and definitely worth checking out. That was our review of Pax Pamir 2.0. The casual gamer plays a not casual game and gives it a good review.
Absolutely. Go try it.